Hey, everybody, and welcome to Common Good Conversations, a podcast creating deeper narratives at the intersection of faith and politics for the common good in West Michigan. I'm Nick Brock, and joining me is Shawn Skinner.
Hey, everybody, let's talk about cancel culture.
Cancel culture it is, listener. Sometimes, as you know, with this podcast, we run into technical difficulties. So we started recording this. We got into like maybe 2 minutes where we were talking about putting bleach into our bodies, whether shooting it directly or drinking it. Drinking beers at the pool and making peanut butter sandwiches, and then it all shut down. So
peanut butter banana
that's just
sandwiches.
A little snippet. Yeah, also known as the Elvis. So, hey, welcome to this second recording of this episode. Hopefully we can pick up where we left off. So where do you want to pick up, Shawn?
Well, first, I think we should start off with, do not ingest bleach. It was a joke.
Oh, yeah. It reminds me, just like, who said that before? Who recommended, like,
I think it was
shooting,
Kamala Harris, wasn't
bleach. I can't remember. Somebody important. I don't know. Maybe somebody can Google this and find it out. But
Trump?
Yeah,
Was it Trump?
Disclaimer. Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure you can find that. Disclaimer: don't do it. Not good for you. Not meant to be put in your body or taken as a drink.
Yep.
So. Next,
moving on.
Hey, Shawn, check this out. So my truck broke the other day. I was going home, and there's like this little kind of, I don't know. There's an elevation, little pitch to go into my driveway. Right, you got to go up from the road. There's a little hill you got to go up, and then it flattens out, and then you got to go up again. I don't know why. It's just the way that the driveway is made. As I am driving up this, I mean, it's just like 5 feet up. The front end of my vehicle from the right side collapses. It sinks down. And I'm like, oh shit. I think I know what happened. So it was kind of a problem that I knew was maybe going to happen because, my vehicle's got like 300,000 miles on it. Like it's just waiting to die. And it happened. So I get out of the vehicle. Well, first I backed out a little bit from the driveway, which also proved to be a bad idea because once I got out, I found out that the tire itself and wheel was slanted, like at a 45-degree angle in the wheel well.
That's normal. And
it's completely disconnected. So it turned out that the ball joint and the CV shaft for those of you up to speed on those things busted. So took it to the shop, and now it's fixed though. But that's my broken truck story. So that was just a few days ago. But then I think
start looking for a new one. At 300,000 miles, I think you need to put that dog down.
That's the plan. Fix it so it's usable, and then I'm going to get rid of it as quick as I can. But I think here's the best part of the story. So thankfully, it happened just outside of my house. So I had to call the tow guy. So the tow truck shows up maybe, like 2 hours later. And then the tow guy, he goes around the back end of the vehicle, and hooks it from there. And he's going to pull it from the back onto his ramp. The best part though was that the guy, a rather large guy, wearing pants without a belt. And I know that he didn't have a belt because when he was down on the ground, he bent over to use some of the levers and switches and to hook it to the vehicle.
Plumber crack?
Big time. And Wyatt was right with me. And I thought Wyatt was like, he felt super embarrassed because he could see this guy's butt crack. And I was like, hey, what do you think of the tow truck? He was like, Dad. Like, Dad, this guy's. I was like, what's the problem? He's like, that guy. It's like, yeah, it happens sometimes. So that's my broken truck story with plumber's butt crack. Good way to start the program.
Oh yeah. Speaking of all of that, do we have any sponsors today?
I'm so glad you asked because I'd like to thank Shawn
after that conversation,
Company.
we might have lost them all.
Maybe we'll find out after this record, but Shawn Coffee Company supports this podcast. Hey, it's summer, and that means it's time to enjoy some fun in the sun. And I know that both of us are going to do that this afternoon. So, we need to fuel up before our summer adventures with delicious flavors from Shawn Coffee, which is roasted right here in Grand Rapids for over 40 years. Shawn Coffee has multiple summer flavors for you to choose from, Shawn, like s'mores campfire cookie, banana split, star spangled berries, and Neapolitan. Bonus, all are available in decaffeinated coffees too. So listener, if you visit Shawn Coffee shop online at shawcoffee.com and use code RADIO for 20% off, or come into the store located on 29th Street, discount is only available online. How's that sound, Shawn?
That sounds good. That sounds good. Very professional. Very professional.
Okay. Does it make you want to drink some coffee?
Yep. After my Red Bull, I mean, I still have to get, I need to get at least a sample pack of like the Neapolitan or whatnot, for our next episode that I can sip on.
Yeah, I can tell. I'll get that, but I can tell you what it tastes like. A rainbow of flavors. So
that's too many flavors.
A rainbow of might be a little different taste and feel than the maple bacon flavored stuff that you sent me before.
That you have yet to try. You know what also goes with coffee? A good old fashioned Rethink protein bar.
That's right, because why? They support the podcast. Rethink Nutrition makes meal replacement bars made from only the good stuff sourced locally here in West Michigan. And you ask, so what is the good stuff? Great question. Stone ground sprouted oats, natural peanut butter, organic blueberries, pecans, wildflower honey, cherries, apricots, and pea protein powder. You can get these in bar forms with flavors such as apricot crunch, cherry mint, or the double B, blueberry bliss, to boost your mind and body naturally. And here's a really interesting fact about the work that they do. You can also donate a bar to people in crisis situations who require urgent assistance. So right now, that's the people of Ukraine, where they'll be handed out as part of meal kits to orphanages and to families living along the front lines of war. Visit rethinknutrition.org and use code GOOD to get your first order of 25% off.
Nicely done. Nicely done.
There we go. That's 2 records using both sponsors. So that's fun. And you know what, Shawn? I have a promo here before we get to our great guest this afternoon. This is a little bit of the work that we've done with the podcast.
For the record, it is 11 o'clock. It is not afternoon yet. This is still mid-morning.
Still mid-morning?
Yep,
okay.
I thought you had your stuff together, man. Come on.
Great. Can you hear that lawnmower just going in the background, or is that just me?
Just you, thankfully.
Okay, good. You know what? I might not be able to.
But I can make a lawnmower sound if you'd like.
No, please don't.
Like Dumb and Dumber. Right. What's the most annoying sound in the world? Ah.
Great movie. Great movie. All right, here it comes. Sorry for the delay, listener. But this is on the website, Vote Common Good, West Michigan's website. There is a header called the 2024 election, and then a tab called What Happened to My Ottawa GOP. So over the previous year, listener, you know that Shawn and I have had a number of conversations with well-established Republicans in Ottawa County to help us understand the state of local politics. So the central question that we wanted to answer and understand from their point of view was, what happened to my Ottawa GOP? So since Ottawa Impact, a far-right political group, swept the majority of the Ottawa County Board of Commissioners in 2023, they've made sweeping decisions that have left Ottawa County's 300,000-plus residents on a political razor's edge. These self-styled, quote-unquote, vetted Republicans have made numerous decisions which have led to a handful of lawsuits and cost taxpayers nearly $1 million. Their constant exclusion and derision of those who differ from them has voters and candidates alike working to vote them out in 2024. So what you'll hear from these unedited, long-format conversations from these Republicans is courage, boldness, passion, humility, and most importantly, a clarion call to return to a body politic that is good for all of us and not just some of us. And finally, my hope is that this little compilation of podcast episodes will act as a voter guide for you during August 6th Republican primary election when you go to cast your ballot. So you can check that out at our website.
Well said, sir. Well said.
Thank you. All right. Now, here's the best part of the program where I get to introduce our guest. And Shawn, we really get to get into the meat and potatoes of our conversation. So today, we have the privilege of being in conversation with Doug Zylstra, not to be confused with a Doug Zylstra. It is Doug Zylstra. Doug is an Ottawa County Board Commissioner representing District 3 in Holland as a Democrat, and he's serving in his second-year term. Doug, welcome to the program.
Hi, how you doing?
I am doing good this morning. We are doing great. Doug, same question back at you, but I want to check in on how your summer is going with you being in Holland. Do you take advantage of the lakeshore? Are you out at the beach and on the water more than us inlanders?
I think we go out to the beach once or twice a week. We go to Oval Beach, which is in Saugatuck, quite often just because it's closer to us. We're having a great summer, so I really appreciate the question.
Nice. That's pretty good. Shawn, have you been out to the lakeshore yet?
No, not so far. But we're also camping until the 1st of July, so I would like to get out to the lakeshore and see the beach and the water for a little bit, or maybe go to Crust 54 and get some Chicago style pizza over there in Holland. But the wife's like, we're camping, we need to utilize the campground. Heaven forbid we leave the campsite for a little bit.
You better stay in your area because you're paying for it. Man, I haven't been out to the lake yet this year. I need to get out there. Doug, do you know how this is always my gauge for kind of incentive to go out is knowing how warm or cold Lake Michigan is. Do you know, is it warm enough to go wading in? Because if you do the little water test and you walk in and you can't get it past your waist. I'm like, no, I'm going to sit on the beach.
Yeah, no. So we went out last Saturday. We went out to, like I said, Oval Beach, and it takes a little bit. I think the water's still warming up a little bit. But yeah, you can go swimming. It's Oval Beach, for example, is putting up a new sand beach. Some of the erosion had happened, so you can kind of go way out there, and it's not that deep, so you get a lot of shallow water, so it keeps it nice and warm. So I've always, liked that area. We can, keep an eye on the family that way, and yeah, the water's, not August 1 yet, but it's definitely getting there. So
yeah,
still brisk.
Water's nice. Come on in. I'm going to have to go check that out. Oval Beach, you said, down in Saugatuck?
Yeah, no, it's really accessible. We always get an annual pass, and it's a 5-minute drive from the house, 10-minute drive. So yeah, it's nice.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that's not bad at all.
Oh, man. Doug, all right. So, I mentioned at the top here in your introduction that you're serving now in your third term, which are 2-year terms, and just a little advance notice. Hey, voter, when you vote for your commissioner in your district, these terms are moving to 4-year terms. But I want to start us off by just wondering, how did you get involved in politics?
Sure. No, that's a great question. I started around 2007, 2008. We actually lived in Chicago at the time, but my wife was pregnant, and we decided to have our second child here at Zealand Hospital. That's where our first child was born. So we're like, we're going to spend the summer in Michigan with the grandparents, and she's going to have our son Sebastian at Zealand Hospital. And so while she was here and I was kind of commuting back and forth, I'd come for 3 days a week, and just started volunteering with the Ottawa Dem office in Holland while I was here that summer, and spent a lot of time on the Obama campaign that year. We eventually moved back to Holland in 2010. And someone had mentioned, it's great you're coming back. I know you spent a lot of time on the Obama campaign when you had the chance. Do you want to be part of the party structure? We have a vice chair opening, and we'd love to see if you want to be a part. So I was vice chair from 2010 to 2012. And at that point, the chair said, well, I'm looking to take a step back, and would you be interested in moving up to chair? So I was chair of Ottawa County Dems from 2012 to 16. Basically, around that time, one of the jobs of chairs is always candidate recruitment. That's obviously the number one thing that we're doing as chairs. And we were looking for county commission candidates for the city of Holland. In 2012, we had Clay Stauffer, who ran basically for the first time we really contested the seat. And he did a great job, came within 6 points of winning. And I think that was a lot of shock to a lot of folks that a Democrat would come that close to winning a county commission seat. He did not want to run in 2014, so I decided to run myself while I was chair. 2014 was a great cycle for Democrats. So it was, I think a 16-point loss. But I thought I'd stick it out give it one more shot. And so 2016, I ran again. I came a point away from winning. And so that was discouraging, but at the same time, encouraging, right? I was still interested in finding somebody else to maybe run in 2018. We couldn't really find anybody. So I filed again in 2018 and finally won in 2018. So that was my, introduction to the board. And, I've been a commissioner ever since.
Yeah, after multiple attempts.
Yeah.
Wow. Congratulations on being persistent in that way.
Mm-hmm.
With you, your commitment to the local party, and so obviously being a Democrat. I know that Shawn, he had a question because, like this thing, and I know, our program does not focus on national politics. That's just not the emphasis of the program. But there's, this question out there right now that Shawn really wanted to ask. So fire away, Shawn.
Which question was it? We had gone through a lot yesterday.
Which question?
Yeah.
So it was about the top of the ticket here, top of the presidential ticket, and inquiring about the president
whether
himself.
or not he should step aside.
Yeah.
Is that what you're getting at? If your thoughts on if you think Biden should continue his campaign, or do you think he should hand it over to somebody who might be a little bit more coherent and can remember who his actual vice president is, because it's not Vice President Trump.
Right. Yeah. So, that's a great question. I was a big supporter of Vice President Harris. I think I donated back in 2019 before the primaries. When she stepped out, I supported President Biden. Obviously, he had only been vice president at the time. So, I'm a supporter of President Biden. I think that's a great ticket. I think Biden-Harris ticket, for me, should, stay as it is. I think that, in 2028, I think, Vice President Harris has a great shot to become president. But I think that, we saw the rally yesterday in Detroit. I think that President Biden did a great job. Everybody has ups and downs. I know that as a candidate. I know that as a commissioner. You have good meetings and bad meetings. You have good interviews and bad interviews. You have, good talks with constituents, and sometimes, you don't, right? And that's part of life. But I think overall, President Biden has the ability to be a great president going forward, and to be a great candidate going the next 4 months. Sorry. So, That's kind of where I stand on it. I understand that people have different opinions, and I respect that. But I think the idea of President Trump becoming president once again is scary enough that I think we all should say maybe we should all say this, but I mean, regardless of who the nominee ends up being, and I think it will probably end up being President Biden, we need to focus on making sure that we defeat President Trump in November, right?
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah. And like I said, I understand people have different opinions on that. And I've not been in the position of, going out on social media saying this is my belief. But, I do appreciate the question. So.
Yeah, it's pretty choppy waters right now for Democrats and the campaign. There's a lot of people saying, get them out of there, step aside, let somebody do this. But that's not the bulk of our conversation today. Shawn, did you have any follow up for that or anything?
Well, I was just going to say, last night Nick and I were talking, and Nick had talked about the fact that, what if they just flipped the ticket and put Biden as vice president and put Harris as, running as president, because I honestly don't know if Biden wins, I don't know if he'd make it through his entire second term.
Yeah, and I think that's probably for me the most consistent, thing to keep in back of our mind. I think he can. I think we have a vice president for a reason. If for some reason, it's 2026 and, it doesn't look like that's why we have vice presidents, right? So I'm not that concerned about that. I think that President Biden deserves, a chance to get reelected, and, and we have vice presidents there as backups for a reason, right? So.
Gotcha. So voting for Biden is just as much as voting for Kamala.
Yeah, and a friend of mine reached out to me, and I said, look, if you look at 2028 or even, over the next 4 years, half your vote is basically for Kamala Harris to begin with, right? Whether you think about her as the replacement in 2028, or if something were to happen over the next 4 years, basically half your vote already is for Kamala Harris. So, if you like Kamala Harris, I think you're already halfway there if you're voting for President Biden and, Kamala Harris as vice president.
All right, Doug. So I want to take you back to day one of Ottawa Impact and get some of your thoughts, then and now that it's been over a year. So let me just set this up a little bit. So it's January 3. We got to put on our imagination caps. It's January 3, and the commissioners are sworn in during an organizational meeting in front of a standing room only crowd at the Fillmore Complex. Joe Moss is elected board chair. A decision announced long before the meeting, and then the new majority shocks the community with a swath of added surprise agenda items, including firing Administrator John Shea, eliminating DEI department, attempting to replace Adeline Hambley, the health director, implementing the Coleman Legal Group, and then changing the county's motto to where freedom rings. So I'll take you back to the first one here, and then I'd like to hear your thoughts on what you were thinking and feeling while you're on the dais sitting in the chair, and then perhaps now. So the firing of the administrator, John Shea, and then replacing him with John Gibbs. Sure.
So, there was a email that later got leaked or got, published that Doug Van Essen had sent out in December, basically warning the commissioners, all of the commissioners. No, actually, sorry, it was the new commissioners, because I'd gotten a copy. I wasn't originally addressed on it, but I was aware that was on their radar, right? Replacing the administrator and replacing corporate counsel. Obviously, the DEI, they had talked about that a lot. When I got the board rules a week before the meeting, the Where You Belong was not on there. And so it led me to think that they may be doing something with that. And obviously the health director had obviously been, a point of discussion. So, there were 5 big things. None of them individually were absolutely surprising. I think the totality of doing all 5 on the first day, that was a little bit shocking. I think from my end, more, disappointing than shocking, just because, I had the idea that, all of these 5 may eventually happen. I didn't expect they would happen the first day. So I, at the end of the meeting, obviously very deflated. My hope coming into the meeting was that we wouldn't be, removing John Shea, even though we talked about it. Doug Vanessen had, talked about, eventually leaving, so he would need a replacement. Did we need to do that the first meeting? No, I thought that was something we could have done over time. The motto was something I had heard that, for some reason they were very disapproving of. And the DEI, I had thought that they would take a little bit of time and, filter that through, right? And maybe that was my naivete, right? I think I had some discussions with Jacob Bonneman. That was his, preference to say, okay, what is good about this office? What do we not like about this office? And he was very willing to say, okay, let's take our time on this decision and make sure that, if it is something we need to, eliminate, we do that with caution. And maybe we don't need to eliminate. We need to, find what works. But obviously that didn't happen, right? So, at the end of the meeting, you're very deflated, very disappointed, but, not entirely shocked by what happened.
Yeah, I know you mentioned, you weren't so surprised at what happened because you had anticipated these things. But is there one thing that was, I don't know, just felt a little more egregious to you over the others, or really stuck out for you?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a really good question, because there is one. John Shea started out as deputy administrator, and we hired him as a full-time administrator when Administrator Vandenberg left for Kent County. John Shea was a good man. We weren't buddies. We didn't hang out, but I appreciated his, call to service and his vocation, and, his seriousness that he showed toward his job. I remember we took a break about 11:30, and I remember seeing Chair Moss, I don't know if they were, cracking jokes or, but they were Shea and Moss were talking together briefly. And, when the motion was made, it had come after the motion to remove Doug Vanessen. We spent a good deal of time kind of feathering his departure. And so we kind of pushed that out a couple months, just because of the portfolio of things he was working on, if he had just left abruptly in January 3. So when they brought the motion to remove John Shea, I had attempted to kind of say, hey, I understand you want to get rid of John Shea, but he also has a portfolio of things he's working on. Maybe he's willing to stay on and feather his departure and make sure we have a smooth handoff. They didn't want that. I'm not sure if John Shea would eventually, have taken that up. But just the idea that, from the time the motion was presented to him picking up his laptop and water bottle was basically 5 minutes, right? Maybe 10. And I was sitting on the dais fairly close to John Shea. And for me, I still have that in my head, the motion passing, him picking up his laptop, picking up his water bottle, and leaving the boardroom. And I'm sure he had, thought this may happen, but just, that visual image, I think, will stay with me for quite a while, right? Because I think it's just shocking that you would have treated somebody, who's dedicated themselves to Ottawa County. John, lived in Ludington, so it was quite a commute for him. He did that for his wife and for church reasons, and he committed to, being in Ludington for those reasons and working in Ottawa County. So, to see him treated that way, I thought, that does not bode well for the future, right? So,
Yeah.
and
I mean,
that's probably not a decision that we're going to reverse anytime. But for me, that was probably the most shocking thing that happened that day. Just the quickness of that departure and just the heartlessness of it, right?
yeah, and this was happening, in like a room full of people, and when, I'd have to go back to the video, but as they're making decisions, and I have to imagine as John Shea is picking up his things, and John Gibbs walks in from the back of the room, like it's an uproar, applause, right? Like so.
Yeah, I didn't necessarily talk about that part, but that was also very disappointing, right? Just the idea that half the room was clapping and applauding his departure, and I can see like you're applauding Gibbs coming on, but no, it was applauding his departure, right? Because they thought that John was instrumental in the mask mandate, which he wasn't. That was a health department thing. They thought that John was instrumental in the ARPA decisions, and he wasn't. We had a task force. I think John, did his best to reach out to the commissioner-elects during the fall of 2022. Something that, for me, struck me as, him really bending over backwards. Usually, if you're a commissioner-elect, you don't necessarily get that access. But they, demanded that access. And John, bent over backward to give them access to information and all the, a lot of things that were going on behind the scenes, which, I was commissioner-elect, and, it never even occurred to me to, ask for that kind of access, right? We're not sworn in until we're sworn in. So, but I thought, on a variety of levels, that was, a very, heartful and difficult thing to see. So.
Did they promise anything? Did they promise anything to Joe Gibbs to come down and take that position?
I have no idea. Because
that was right on the tail end of him losing his run.
Yeah, no, he was in the back, campaign. And I think I noticed him in the back, but nothing really, clicked. Yeah, I guess obviously you're probably not going to get Joe Moss on this podcast, but that would be a good question to ask him. But I have no idea.
Yeah, I mean, my opinion is that I would have to surmise that the promise is, hey, John Gibbs, you just lost your congressional campaign. Why don't you just step into this other government position and just carry on? Like, that's the promise. I mean, that would be appealing to anybody, right?
And then we'll fire you a little later down the line.
Yeah, it's a well-paid position and a prestigious position, and I forget offhand what the number is, 220,000 plus some benefits and perks, and so
hell, I'll do that.
Not nothing, right? So I don't necessarily think there was anything maybe beyond that. Obviously, what we saw over the term of John Gibbs was that he was extremely loyal to Moss and to Impact until he was let go, right? So I don't know if they necessarily said, you're going to be working for the 6 or 7 of us and not for everybody else. I think that probably was just, implied, that if they're bringing him on, that he'd been administrator for only 7 commissioners and not for the full board. That's that's not the way. Go ahead.
Did you ever get to talk to him at all?
To John Gibbs?
To Gibbs, yeah.
Yeah, no, after the first meeting, I shared my cell phone number with him, and I said we'd catch up, and I don't really think we ever had a conversation. I think the very first conversation I really had with Gibbs was a week before he was let go, because we went to closed session because he asked to hear the charges against him in closed session, and I happened to sit next to him in closed session, and and I asked John if he knew about any of these charges, and he said no. And we exchanged 3 or 4 sentences, and I think that was the first conversation I'd really had with John Gibbs, other than maybe during a board meeting and asking him about XYZ. But we didn't really have much of a conversation. So
I want to move. Go ahead, Doug. Finish.
No. I mean, I think, you know, Shawn Gibbs. You know, like I said, I didn't spend much time with him. I think he's a good person. He tried, you know, to tell some of the impact folks that he was struggling with corporate counsel, and that's probably what led to his firing, right? So he took his job seriously. You know, whether he was the exact right person for the job, you know, I probably don't think so, but you know, he took his job seriously and tried his best. And I think that, you know, I guess for that, you know, the way he was fired is also, you know, was disappointing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, so then I'm going to move this along here just a bit here. So in February of this year, you remarked to the Holland Sentinel and Sarah Leach at the time that despite a year filled with lawsuits and drama, that you remained hopeful for dialogue, even if the Ottawa Impact majority of the board remains in control.
Mm-hmm.
So with you being the lone Democrat, that was kind of the point and emphasis in this article, is that you found yourself in a unique position to foster dialogue. And like that was your goal, to communicate and foster dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder, like, why is that so important to you, and why do you want that, you know, to live across the board?
Sure. Well, I'm unsure if that quote was before or after, you know, we resolved the Adeline Hambley issue, but I think it's probably before that, because that has been my position, you know, is that when we get into a closed session, I think we have good conversations, you know, without cameras present and without the, you know, audience present. I think the final conversation with Adeline Hambley was a good conversation. It was obviously a long conversation. I think we started at 8:30 and we finally wrapped up at 5 or 6. Obviously there were breaks in between, but you know, the fact that we came out of that meeting and we all agreed that, you know, her staying was the best decision. I felt like I was, you know, was fortunate enough to be part of that discussion. I was there all day, you know, and, you know, all of assistance in getting to that point, right, where, you know, all 11 commissioners ended up saying, let's keep her. That's the best decision. And I think that was a good moment. And I think, you know, of all the things that we've done over the last year and a half, the fact that we didn't do this one thing is probably the most significant action we've taken, right? Which is kind of ironic.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the most important action is something we didn't actually do, and not firing her. So I think, you know, I am always optimistic. You know, otherwise I wouldn't be running. Otherwise I wouldn't continue to be a commissioner. I think, you know, my history of, you know, being chair of the Ottawa Dems in a very red county, having good relationship with the Ottawa GOP at that time. Adam Tuntos was chair. We had a good relationship. Amanda Van Essen was chair after that. We had a good relationship. We still have a good relationship, you know, and it was founded on, you know, you're the opposite side, but, you know, trust and respect. And, you know, even if we have different goals. And when I came on the board, that was my first goal, was to say, look, I'm going to be the only Democrat in the history of this board. They're not used to working with Democrats. I'm kind of used to working with Republicans. They're definitely not used to it. And my job was to create some rapport and some trust where, you know, we can have a relationship with Doug and we know where he's at. He's going to disagree with us. He's going to tell us where he disagrees with us. But at the end of the day, you know, we're going to leave board meetings 11 commissioners, right? Obviously, that hasn't happened the last year and a half to the same extent. But, you know, there have been times, especially on broadband, where we have discussions and, you know, we all leave that dais, 11 commissioners, agreeing on an outcome. And if you watch our board meetings, you know, 90 to 90, I don't know, even in 98% of our items, we all agree on, right? It's just those, you know, 5% of issues that we don't agree on that make it really difficult. So.
Yeah.
But like I said, I'm always optimistic.
Yeah, that optimism too. So I want to speak to that a little bit. So, you mentioned you're the only Democrat for the longest time when you got elected first. That was pretty historical. And now, due to the recent recall election that ousted Lucy Ebel and then having her replaced by Chris Kleinyan's Democrat, you now have two Democrats on the board. How significant is that for the Ottawa Dems and Ottawa County, just in general?
I think Chris's election just really was emblematic of a lot of teamwork. I started out in the Dem Party in 2008 and 2012, where the Dems were like, "Oh, when is the Obama organizer going to come? Oh, when is the Clinton organizer going to come?" Or even in 2020, when is the Biden organizer going to come? Because they're going to help us get everything in shape, right? I think what happened since January of 2023 with Democrats and with, I would say like-minded independents is like, you don't need to wait, right? We can be the agent of change. And just, I wasn't a part of it, but just watching from the outside, the signature gathering, all the efforts to get that recall election called, and then the actual campaign, I think showed a lot of people that, we can be the change here in Ottawa County. And I think that's just continued through, right? The focus on local politics and the Democratic Party is off the charts, right? I mean, when I first came in, it was just Obama, let's get him elected. And I'm like, yeah, we definitely need to get elected, but we definitely need to get local Democrats elected. And it took 10 years for that to happen. But, once it's happened and, Chris is the second and, hopefully we get 3, 4, 5 Democrats elected in the future. And whether it's this cycle or not, I think people can see that, oh, there's fruit to my effort and let's keep working because, we believe in certain things and, let's make sure that we have people in place who see the world the way we see it and have the ability to make change, right? So I think, I would hate to say, this is a good outcome of the last year and a half, but I mean, it is definitely, an outcome of the last year and a half is that people see that, local change is only affected by local action, right? So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's this sloganeering campaign that the Ottawa Dems have. It's like "Dare to Be," or "Dare to Be for All." And
Right.
as I mentioned at the top of the program, Shawn too, like we've had a number of conversations with Republicans, running for office who are pushing back against Ottawa Impact and the Ottawa GOP. And so there's this infighting within the party, and that represents, what's going on in Michigan and even nationally. But the slogan here for the Ottawa Dems is "Dare to Be." So I see this juxtaposition. How would you I don't know. There are a lot of like Democrats now. I believe in every district, correct, running for a commissioner
Right.
seat.
So we have 12. We have 12 candidates for 11 seats. There's one seat in Grand Haven that has 2 candidates. So.
Okay. Yep. Yeah. So I wonder, I mean, like it's Dare to Be. I wonder if you could just speak to that a little bit about, I've heard it put this way too, is that when it comes to the Ottawa County Board of Commissioners, like the Dems are the adults in the room, so to speak. So is that kind of how you're positioning yourself a bit?
I mean, I would like to think so. I think, if you go back to the slogan, Dare to Be, I mean, number one, a party is nothing without candidates. So daring to be a candidate, and we've shown that, we are daring to be candidates. This cycle, we got 12 of them for 11 spots, when in the past, maybe there was myself and 2 or 3 other candidates. And, so starting out from just, basic, in order to get Democrats elected, you need to get Democrats on the ballot. And so we've stepped up. We have great Democrats running for county commission. And I'm not sure how August the primary is going to shake out, but we know that we have, great Democrats to be there in August and, represent our ideals. And, for me, who, I basically started running in 2014, it's just super to see, right? It's super to see so many people, standing up. And I was at a state rep forum yesterday for the chamber, and just to see Abby and Tim and Lois, represent us and represent our ideals in that forum, which is generally speaking, we didn't have access to the Chamber of Commerce, political forums, but now we do, because I think in part because they recognize, hey, the Democrats are fielding great candidates. They're people who want this community to go forward. They have a prosperous and equitable future. They need to be part of this conversation too. So I think that's been, one of the main, for me, like, positives of the last year and a half is, people stepping up and people showing this community that, we love this community and we want, to be positive partners for the future, right?
Mm-hmm. I've heard, and I know that you've heard it too, as like more Democrats, or progressives start to speak up and stand up. One of the things that often gets lodged at them is this kind of like, your Democrats or progressives are woke, they're communists, they're socialists, they're anarchists, and that's in no particular order. I've heard that, from folks at public comment saying that. And then, there's even, Republicans who are running for office that are not a part of Ottawa Impact, saying that, we don't want to get wound up in this, so-called quote unquote woke culture. So I got a two-part question here. Number one, so I guess quite frankly, Doug, are you a woke candidate? And then I'll ask the second question later. But, are you a woke candidate? Like, what does that mean to you? What is it not?
Yeah, it's a good question, because I don't know what that means, Nick. I think, I've been a commissioner for 5.5 years, and I think that, after every meeting I put out my blog, and, if it's it's a contentious vote, I'll tell people why I voted that way. So, I have, 120 meetings of history that people can go through and say, okay, well, we know what kind of commissioner Doug will be in the future, because we have 120 some examples of how he's been in the past, right? So I think labels, don't make sense to me. I think you just say, hey, I've seen what he's done. And I get that, fortunately enough, from residents in my district who maybe not Democrats, are like, hey, I don't normally vote Democrat, but I've seen what you've done over the last year and a half, and I really appreciate it. I see, what you're trying to do, and, add stability to this board. So our focus is, I wouldn't say necessarily be the adult in the room, or on the other hand, to be woke. I think our focus is, making sure that we are, part of the conversation about having a positive, equitable future for this county, right? Where all voices get heard, and all values are placed on the table, right? So I think that if you ask all 12 of us, I think that will be the common thread, right?
Yeah. So, in this too, we touched on it real briefly at the top, but I want to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and the way that department was abolished. Is that a department that you want to see back up and running? Yeah, I'll just start there. Is that a department that you would really want to see going forward?
Yeah, well, let's take it in two parts. Would I like to see the DEI department reestablished? For sure, right? I mean, that was one of my first votes. The vote to remove it was, a very, very, disappointing moment. And if we have enough votes on the board in 2025, and, I would definitely love to see that. Is that entirely likely? I can't predict the future. One thing I've always talked about, and even, after we had the DI office is some sort of ombudsman, because we don't really have anybody in Ottawa County who can be there as a liaison for the public, as well as for the board members and for employees. When I first brought it up, I was told, "Look, that's the job of the board." But I think we've seen over the last year and a half is that expecting that to happen is not that's not always going to happen, right? Because it obviously depends on the composition of the board, whether you're going to get 11 members dedicated to the well-being of all 300,000 residents, right? And I think that that's been fairly evident, that this board is not necessarily concerned about that. So I think maybe a short step for me would be some sort of ombudsman office that has equity as part of it and equity inflected. And we'll see what the composition looks like for 2025 as far as going farther than that.
Yeah, Doug, I wonder if you could be a little more specific here when you say the Ottawa Impact, those commissioners are not concerned about all residents. Can you? What does that mean to you specifically? What residents do you have in mind that they're not including?
Well, yeah, I mean that's a good question because I think that there's two things. I mean. Yes, all residents have access to our basic services, right? And we don't deny access to our services. But I think that there's a very strong and I think accurate perception from the public that, the impact majority is there to, quote unquote, as Joe Ma says, defend your piece of America, right? Whereas I'm like, no, there's no piece of America. There's no piece of Ottawa County. There's Ottawa County, right? And I guess I look at it through the lens of the recall from last year where, Commissioner Bergman and myself were subject to a recall for the childhood innocence vote, right? Which grew out of the disapproval that some of my colleagues had for the Grand Haven Pride, right? And the resolution was that county staff couldn't attend an event or dedicate any resources where, quote unquote, childhood innocence is at stake. I mean, obviously that was very poorly, that was not fully worded. It was very vaguely worded. And we talked about it at the time and they had promised, to flesh that out, which never happened. But, at the end of the day, that resolution and just even what I've seen in the campaign, makes it very clear that, for example, the LGBT community in Ottawa County is not entirely, welcome and appreciated as full members of this community. And I know that maybe sounds harsh, but I think if you just look at what was said last summer in some of the subcommittees, I think that is not, entirely unfair because I think anybody who witnessed some of this discussion came away thinking like, hey, LGBT residents of Ottawa County don't feel the love from this board, and that's been pretty obvious, right? So that's just one example where I think that we can and should do better going forward. And if we have a different composition of the board, I think that we will need to, address that, getting rid of the motto "Where You Belong," for "Let Freedom Ring" or "Where Freedom Rings." Obviously we all, love this country. We love the fact that it's based on freedom and individual liberties, but, to get rid of the idea that, Ottawa County is a place where everyone belongs, that was part of, all the emails I got, following that meeting, that was probably number one, right? Because people really felt and took that personally, which they had a right to, because, if you're basically getting rid of that motto, you're basically saying, no, there are folks who don't belong here, right? Or at least that we're not, making sure they feel like they belong here. So,
Yeah. Doug, I got two more things for you.
sure.
And I know that you're being gracious with your time. We've had some technical difficulties now, and we're just running little behind. So appreciate you sticking with it. Two more things, though. I got some 4 questions from our Facebook listeners.
Sure.
The first question comes from Carla Bender, and she asks, how will you serve in contrast to current Ottawa Impact Commissioners? And I think we hit on this a little bit earlier.
And I appreciate that question. But, I guess I'd go back to the same thing I said before. I have 5.5 years of history on the board, 120 some meetings, and you can find out how I voted on any, contentious issue over the last 5.5 years. And I don't intend to change, when I'm too old to change, probably. But, I feel like, I will be the commissioner that I have been. So if you appreciate some of the things I've done in the past, there's no worry about me changing, because, that's how I see the world, and, that's how I'll keep going forward. There's been a lot of 10-1 votes in the old days, and, maybe 9-2, 9-3 votes now, but, we've even had some 10-1 votes over the last year and a half. And, I have no problem being a 10-1 vote, right? I think I've shown that, that does not worry me whatsoever. So I'll keep, doing what I'm doing, and, go from there.
Mm-hmm. And this one comes from Elizabeth Depphouse, and she asks, what would you like to correct on day one of a newly elected board?
No, I think that's a super question, because I get that question a lot, and I don't want to not answer it, but I think a lot of it is dependent on what the board looks like, right? There's no one commissioner who has the ability to dictate, or at least there should not, we should not have that. I think one of the problems of the last year and a half is that we've had, some of those situations where that has happened. So I would be in no position to say, this is what I want and this is going to happen. It's all about working with your colleagues and making sure you get consensus. If we get to the point where Ottawa Impact is not in the majority in 2025, I've heard a lot of talk about, let's address the corporate counsel situation. Personally, I get along with counsel, but at the end of the day, it's about performance, and it's about, the job they do for, the 1,200 employees as well as the 300,000 residents. And I think over time, there have been instances where corporate counsel has not shown themselves to be, kind of at that level of working for the 1,200 staff and the 300,000 residents. Maybe they changed their ways. We have a 3-year contract with them. But that is one thing I've heard from, the Republicans who are not OI running in August. And I think that may be a step where we could say, look, we have a year left in your contract. We don't want to terminate the contract, but we want you to, be the corporate counsel that we need you. I think that would be a very good step. Symbolically, I think the where you belong versus that freedom ring issue should be resolved. I mean, I understand it's symbolic, but I think it still rubs a lot of people wrong. I'm in favor of just not having a motto for a while. We have a great logo, the sun and the waves and the beach, and that's good enough for now. And then we'll maybe sort out the motto later on, and just not have one, because I think that's been very divisive. And then the rest of it does depend on, what the board composition looks like. But those two things, I think, if Impact is not in the majority, I think most of the folks who would be coming in would agree that, hey, we need to address the corporate counsel issue. Hey, we really need to address this motto issue, which may be symbolic, but symbols matter. I don't know what the administrative situation will look like. Obviously, we have an interim administrator, and it's hard to say what would happen between now and, January of 2025. If John Anderson doesn't win, will he stick around as interim? Would he be appointed as full-time interim? I think that's a big question mark. I think we need to have, leadership that reflects Ottawa County. We need to have a board that reflects Ottawa County, and obviously, there is a big chunk of Ottawa County that is impact, and that's the direction they want to go. There's another part of the county that is, fully Democratic, and that's the way they want to go. There's another part of the county that says, I'm not a Dem, not an impact Republican, and this is the direction I want to go. If we have a board that looks like that, I think that will serve residents very well, and that we should go from there and start having staff and leadership at Ottawa County that resembles that as well. So a lot of it depends on what happens with the elections. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Speaking of that, so Amy Chipman asks, how would you respond to those who claim it's useless to vote for Democratic candidates in Ottawa County? And that'll be our final question.
Sure. Yeah, no, I appreciate the question, but I think that we've shown how valuable it is to vote for Democrats, right? It's 2 years ago, Joe Spalding ran for that district seat. He lost by only 6 points. And this time, Chris in a special election, won by 20. So how useful was it to vote for Chris? It was very useful, right? And I hope that, City of Holland residents realize that it's useful to vote for a Democrat for their county commissioner, because I think hopefully they've seen that I've worked hard and tried to hear their voices. And, I think they'll have plenty of chances, obviously, to vote for Democrats in November. And I think that all of my colleagues, to a person, believe that we are there, to make sure Ottawa County moves forward, continues to be a prosperous, healthy county, and that, pursues goals for all 300,000 of us. So.
There you have it. Thank you. Let's see, Carla, Elizabeth, and Amy for those questions. All right, Doug, this is the final thing, and we'll land here. So this will be your second go around as a common good candidate in Ottawa County. Sure. So I want to extend my gratitude to you for that. And what that means, listener, is that Doug has committed to, or really has selected himself and then committed to these values: trustworthy leadership, responsible governance, genuine belonging, ethical conduct, service before self, and love in politics. Doug, real briefly, do you want to share your thoughts into why you wanted to commit to this?
Yeah, no, that's a really great question, and we get a lot of questionnaires, and do you want to be endorsed or you want to be a candidate? I'm like, for the most part, I've been in office for 5.5 years. I think folks, have a good idea. But when you guys sent me that, I'm like, no, I definitely want this, because this is what I have been doing, right? Or I've been trying to do, be a trustworthy leader, govern with responsibility, show that, belonging is important, that all 300,000 residents matter, that, my conduct as a commissioner needs to be on the highest ethical level, and, and to serve, my constituents before myself. Right. So, for me, it's a no-brainer, right? Because, does it matter to me whether I'm endorsed by the Service Beverage Corporation of Michigan? No. But when you guys say, hey, these are our values, I'm like, those are my values. That is a no-brainer, right? So, but yeah, I'm looking forward to, the next 4 months, and there's a lot of great candidates who are, candidates for common good, and I think that we'll continue to show Ottawa County residents what it means to be a common good candidate. So, looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the neat part here, at least, for me is, based on the number of conversations that I've had with people across the district, is that those values resonate just up and down. So, it's hearing the things from the community and seeing it from candidates themselves, and just, helping to spread that word and spread that message throughout the community. So, really excited to have you a part of that, and then others who will be forthcoming throughout the year. All right, listener, that is Doug Zylstra.
Yeah, well, thank you for all your. I just want to say thank you for all your work, Nick. I know that's, you're a tireless worker for the common good in West Michigan, and I always appreciate your focus on, making sure that, we have a focus on West Michigan, and people know that they have candidates they can vote for, whether Democrat or Republican. We share those values.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Doug, for those words. So that is Doug Zylstra. Doug is Ottawa County Board Commissioner representing District 3 in Holland as a Democrat, and he's serving in his third second-year term, but he's also running for his fourth term, which will be for 4 years, so you can connect with Doug as he campaigns. Finally, Doug, where do you want people to connect with you on the campaign trail?
You talking social media wise? You talking like physical wise?
Yeah, all your spots. What do you want to plug here?
So go to my Facebook page. Zylstra for County Commissioner is the Facebook page. That's where I'm most active, and where you can find events. But of course, my Commissioner Zylstra page is out there for my official elected official stuff as well. So those two Facebook pages, we're going to see the most possibilities, most opportunities. There
it is. There are your marching directions if you want to support Doug Zylstra. Doug, thanks for joining the program, and we'll talk soon. And I'm sure I'll see you throughout the county. All right. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Nice to meet you, Doug.
All right. Shawn, thank you very much. Take care.
Too.
All right, listener, we'd love to hear from you. What did you think of our conversation with Doug? Was this helpful for you? Who would you like to have us on the program? Be sure to leave your comments on our Facebook page under this podcast episode. In our new little widget, there's a text message thing that pops up on our episodes, and then you can send us a little message. We'd really like to hear from you. Also, if you want to stay informed in 2024, sign up for our weekly newsletter at votecommongood-wm.org, where you can sign up to receive weekly podcast updates and event updates. Be sure to follow us on our socials with Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. All right, Shawn, any final word before I cue us out?
I think you can cue us out, sir. I hope everybody has a good day.
All right, you heard it there. Thanks, listener, for joining this Common Good conversation. Till next time, be the common good in West Michigan.